Recording in
verbally
progress.
give people the 30-second reminder and time is expired reminder.
Honestly, it really depends on how many people are trying to comment. So if it's a lot of people, if you see a lot of chat happening, then it would be helpful if you can help me monitor that.
Absolutely. Right. I will do that.
This is the interpreter. Is this a specific issue that's getting put to the public, or is this just your regular public meeting?
This is Angela, it'll be a little bit of a presentation in the beginning, probably for about the first half. And then the second half is going to be primarily public feedback could be a variety of topics.
On that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon. This is Luis.
Hey, Luis.
Okay, I can be heard. All right, cool.
Yep, it's about 6 till, so we'll probably wait until, 1 or a couple minutes after to let people get signed on.
Lori, I'm going to step away just for a second. I'll be right back.
No problem. So how's the weather in Indiana today? Well, I know it could look differently in different parts, but
Yeah, here in central Indiana, it's actually a little bit warmer. It's like 40, I think, out. But this weekend, the high is like 12 and 15. So it's going to get really, really cold.
Wow.
How about, North Carolina, you guys vary a lot too, right? Because you've got mountains and oceans and the whole thing. So how is it where you are?
So I'm in Wilmington along the coast, and it's chilly. We are getting ready for a icy weekend. They're calling for significant snow out west in the mountains. And of course, by the time it gets to the coast, it's warm enough that it's ice. I'd rather have snow, but
Same. Yeah.
maybe they'll miss it all together, which, hey, they've known to do that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. This is one of the ASL interpreters. I just wanted to ask for multi-pin permission or spotlight, either or, preferably
I'm
both.
sorry, what was the first spotlight or what was your other option?
Multi-pin, preferably both would be great.
Yeah.
I believe we'd have to be co-hosts for that.
Yeah, I just allowed you to multi-pin.
Thank you.
Yes, both interpreters should be able to do that now.
And Carrie will cover during the accessibility reminders how they can pin the ASL interpreter if that helps them as well.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Well, on a separate note, if you love football, it was a big day for Indiana.
Yeah, the whole state is pretty excited. Well, except for maybe like Lafayette, where Purdue's at. But other than that, I think everybody is pretty happy.
Mike, this is Gloria.
Yep.
I see we're at 1:59. I don't want to start too early, but I am going to depend on you to tell me when you think we're ready to start based on, people you think we're going to attend.
Yeah, I see Erica just joined. So we have Erica.
Yeah, and Jeremy and Kimberly are here.
Yes, is Peter?
Carrie. Do not see Peter yet.
I don't either. Should we give Peter another minute or two?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
No, you should.
absolutely.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there's Peter.
I
Look,
just sent that to you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You can.
Yes, you're coming through just fine,
Good,
Peter.
good, good.
Okay.
Gloria, then I think we have everybody that we're expecting. We have our ASL and CART services set up and ready to go. So
Okay, great. If you haven't muted yourself, please do so. But we're going to cover some additional accessibility reminders. But I want to kick things off. I know it's 2:00 and we have a lot to cover today. I want to thank everyone for being here today. My name is Gloria Garten, and I'm one of the contractors here today on behalf of the Independent Living Training and Technical Center out of the University of Montana, and will be facilitating today's meeting. For a visual description, I am a white female with blonde shoulder-length hair. I'm wearing glasses and a gray sweater. I have over 18 years of experience working in independent living and almost 30 years of experience in nonprofit management. I guess that kind of dates how old I am, but I will say working in the independent living community for the last 18 years has been the best 18 years in my career. I previously was a center director in North Carolina for 14 years before I became the executive director of the North Carolina INSILC. And I've been in that position for 4 years. I do want to begin today by acknowledging the history and experiences that have brought us all together today. Like many independent living networks, we face challenges from a variety of different angles. We have different perspectives, and most importantly, we all have a very strong sense of passion that we bring to supporting independent living. And that is why today we have the opportunity to really channel that energy and passion into something positive. And the purpose of today's meeting is to gather feedback from the independent living community, including the statewide network, to determine how we can best work together to move forward, strengthen the independent living philosophy, and continuously improve independent living services to people with disabilities in Indiana. Today's discussion is about collaboration, respect, and shared purpose. Every voice matters. In order to be successful in this session today, though, please be mindful of listening to one another so we can turn our collective experiences and expertise into real progress for the people who we serve. Remember, that is always our first priority. Think of this as a chance to build understanding, find common ground, and I want most importantly for us all to leave with clarity, hope, and an excitement about moving forward. During today's session, you're going to hear from representatives from the Administration of Community Living, including the Director of the Office of Independent Living Programs. That'll be followed by an informative overview of independent living philosophy and how that relates to the roles of the INSILC and the centers. Next, the Indiana INSILC is going to share some important updates, and then we'll move right into question and answer. We do want to make sure that half of this meeting is dedicated for feedback and question and answers. Before we dive into our discussion, I do want to take a moment for everyone to introduce themselves. And if we could first start with the independent living training and technical assistance staff. Carrie, will you start us off and then call on the other two?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Gloria. It looks like I'm having a little bit of technical issues, so I will turn my video off after this so that I can make sure to capture everything. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carrie England. I work for the Training and Technical Assistance Center. I also am the SILC director for California. Unlike Gloria, I have about 26 years in the field in a variety of capacities. I'm going to send it over to Jeremy to introduce himself. Jeremy?
Uh, Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy Warner. I am a independent business owner offering consulting and support services to really any business that is about accessible diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I'm also a member of the ADA Trainer Leadership Network, and for the last 20 years have been a person with multiple disabilities, both physical and mental. So that is who I am.
Thank you so much. Jeremy Morris,
Morris.
from the ILT and TA. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Carrie. My name is Jeremy Morris. I am the SILC director in your neighboring state of Ohio, and I also get to do some of the training and technical assistance work with the Independent Living Training and Technical Assistance Center. Before I was the SILC director, I was a SIL director, and I worked at another center for independent living. So in all, it's been about 18 years, I think, since I've worked in independent living. And with that, I will pass it over to Kimberly Tissot.
Hey everyone, I'm Kimberly Tissot. I am the president and CEO of ABLE South Carolina, and I am also part of the Independent Living TA Center out of University of Montana. If I was presenting in front of you all, I am a white woman with dark blonde shoulder-length hair wearing glasses. And I also am a person with a physical disability. I have one leg from a childhood cancer, and my style of mobility is to walk on crutches. I have been the director of ABLE South Carolina for over 16 years, and before that, I was with the protection and advocacy system for about 8 years. So coming into this with a lot of rights, but mainly the independent living philosophy. But I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Thank you, Kimberly. I would next like the Indiana Silk to introduce themselves. Mike, I'll let you start us off.
Sure. My name is Mike Fodrell. I'm the executive director of the Indiana Statewide Independent Living Council. I've been in this role for almost 2 years. And previous to that, I've had lots of different positions within the Indiana kind of disability field and working in the field for about the last 26 years. And then visually, I'm in my mid 40s, shaved head, and I have a disability myself. I have cerebral palsy. So glad to be with you guys today.
All right, and I am Casey Weldy. I am the chair of the Independent Living Council, and I am a person that is deafblind. I have vision and hearing loss combined. I have been on the council since, oh gosh, 2021 and 21, 22. And so I was appointed by the governor and have been on the council and have been in the role of chair. This is my second term as chair. I'm in my second term as a member of the council as well. And so it's been a ride and we're trying to move forward. I'm gonna turn this over to Katie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Myers. I am the operations manager at INSILC. I have been in the independent living world for less than a year, but I've been working for nonprofits for about over a decade. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback today.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else from the Indiana Silk mic that needs
I
to
am
introduce?
Luis Roman Vice.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Northern Indiana. I've been in the disability rights or living arena for 30 plus, and I'm totally blind.
Thanks,
Thank
Luis.
you.
And I know we have a couple other council members that are watching as well, and you guys can introduce yourselves if you would like, but you do not have to if you don't want to. But if any of our other council members want to, you're welcome to.
Hello, my name is Haley Brown. I have cerebral palsy and I work for the League for the Blind and Disabled as their advocate development specialist.
Thanks, Haley. And I see Catherine raised her hand as well. So Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself?
This is the interpreter speaking, and Catherine says, yes, I am an INSILC council member and I have 15 years of state government and nonprofit organization experience.
Thank you, Catherine.
I'm Ann Barnhart, and I work for the Independent Living Center of Richmond, and I'm a member of the INSILC board.
Thank you, Ann.
Mike, this is Gloria. Is that everyone, you think?
I think that's probably everybody that would like to. Yep.
Okay, great. So next, I am excited that we have with us two representatives from the Administration of Community Living today. Erica, would you like to go first?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Is the microphone working?
Yes, you're coming through, Peter.
Yes.
Okay.
Erica is still muted.
Can you hear me as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're sharing the same office. So is it okay, Gloria, if we kick off? Do you want us to go ahead and introduce ourselves and go into our spiel?
Yes, we do need to cover some accessibility reminders, but I think we're okay to do accessibility reminders after your spiel, as long as people understand. We'll take questions only after you've completed your introductions and your comments.
Just so people are clear about how to use the features, can we have like Carrie leapfrog us and go ahead and do that?
Sure.
I just don't want anybody to miss out on what we're saying.
I think that's really important. Thanks, Erica.
Yes.
So this is Carrie. I'm going to cover some meeting ground rules and accessibility information. To support accessibility and meaningful participation, please note the following. The chat function is disabled to ensure accessibility and accurate tracking of questions. So if you enter something into the chat, it will only go to the hosts and panelists, and we will address any questions in the order that they are received. You can also use the raise hand function. Please wait until you are recognized by the meeting facilitator before you start speaking. You also may email questions or comments at any time. I've put that in the chat, but you can email those to info, I-N-F-O, indianasilk.org. We'll put it in the chat one more time for you. Again, please wait to be recognized by the meeting facilitator before you start speaking. And once you're recognized, if it's at all possible for you to turn your camera on and unmute yourself, then say your name before you start speaking. Each speaker will be allotted up to 3 minutes for questions or comments. And of course, those who may need additional time as a reasonable accommodation may be allowed 1 to 2 more additional minutes to ensure effective communication is possible. Facilitator will ensure that all participants wishing to speak have an opportunity to speak once before additional comments from the same individual are taken. Please allow speakers to finish without interruption. Keep those microphones muted unless you are recognized by the facilitator. Please use respectful and courteous language at all times. Questions will be addressed in the order received as time permits. If you experience any technical or accessibility barriers, including issues with audio, captions, interpretation, or the chat feature, please contact Mike, and I will put that in the chat as well, but his email is moddrill@indianasilk.org, and we will assist you as quickly as possible. Of course, you can always put something in the chat as well. We do have interpreter and captioning access. For ASL interpretation, to pin an interpreter, hover over the interpreter video, select 3 dots on the upper right-hand side and select pin. This will keep the interpreter visible throughout the meeting. If multiple interpreters are present, you can repin as needed. There's also live captions. If you don't see those, you may need to select the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Or if you don't see that option, you can click there is a circle to the right-hand side on the bottom of the screen. It says more. You can select that and select show captions. So final notes, we know participation looks different for everyone, and we really value all forms of participation. So attend to your access needs as they arise. No explanation is required. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to make things easier for you during this call. And thanks for helping us maintain an accessible and respectful and productive meeting environment. All right, I'm going to turn it back to you, Erica.
Thanks, Terry. Peter, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself first before I do?
I would, yes. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes, Peter.
Yes, Peter.
Okay. I'll start with a visual description. I'm a 40-year-old Asian American man with short, dark hair, and I'm wearing glasses and wearing a dress shirt and a sweater. I'm Peter Nye. I'm the Independent Living Program Officer for the region that includes Indiana at the Administration for Community Living. Before today's discussion, I want to acknowledge the excellent work that the Indiana IL community has done. The cooperation that has enabled this excellent work, and the IL philosophy that has been often largely underpinning this excellent work. We are here to resolve issues collaboratively and consistently with the IL philosophy by focusing on the future. The Indiana IL community has room for improvement, which we need to think about broadly and creatively. So thanks for the opportunity to address everyone.
Thank you, Peter. And I'm Erica McFadden. I'm the director of the Office of Independent Living Programs. I have been doing this work now for about 30 years. I'm wearing black glasses. I have blonde hair. Hopefully I don't look like I've been doing this for 30 years. I have cerebral palsy too, so we are truly disability-led over here in the Office of Independent Living Programs. But I just wanted to thank you guys, all of you, for coming today. I know that these meetings are tough, right? We're having some very hard conversations. There's people who disagree, but I think there's a lot of things that we have in common. And so I think the focus is to figure out how to move forward and strengthen independent living in Indiana, in its philosophy, leadership, how we can have it showing up in practice in ways that actually improve people's lives. And I know this new administration cares about how we are affecting people's lives. And so just know that as the federal oversight agency, we are here to support a strong, collaborative, independent living system, not only in Indiana and every other state. And those systems should reflect the intent of the law and the core principles of independent living. But just know that, our role has limitations. I mean, we can provide guidance, but we can't do the relationship building that's needed on the ground. That's up to you guys to do. In other states that are facing similar challenges, there's really not one right answer. There's many paths forward. It's just figuring out the best solutions and knowing that those come from the disability leadership that's on the ground. So we all know that this is all shared work. It's not just one organization's responsibility, it's everybody's. And we have also seen that systems are strongest, independent living systems are strongest when collaboration is intentional, communication is clear, and responsibility is collective. So it's not just on one organization. So I do want to intentionally acknowledge, though, the work that's happening. Like for the INSILC, we've heard and we witnessed your efforts to strengthen your processes since we've started the CAP. Have even increased transparency and you're responsive to feedback, and we really do appreciate that. And to the SILs and to the individuals from the disability community, you guys are, I know the SILs are on the front lines every day. You're helping people transition out of nursing homes, you're supporting independent living, you're providing peer support that changes people's lives. And I know that work doesn't stop when we're having these conversations, but you're still taking the time away to recognize that this is important, to bring everybody together. And to those of you who are advocates and are individuals with disabilities, those of you who've raised concerns and stayed engaged, that is real leadership. And that is what independent living philosophy is in action. Your voices have shaped this conversation, and it's going to continue to shape the work ahead. This is not just a one and done meeting. It's going to be a series. We're trying to set a new standard for how you all communicate and work together in Indiana, and hopefully leading the way for other states to follow. Know that this is not aspirational, that this is a statutory expectation grounded in federal law, that you all are able to work together, advancing the independent living philosophy. Know that states are expected to operationalize independent living through consumer control, disability-led decision-making, and active system change. So know that whatever we do, it's going to be about being led by people with disabilities for people with disabilities, because we recognize that expertise comes from lived experience. So like many other states, people have raised concerns about how IL philosophy is put into practice. Like how do we have disability-led leadership meaningfully exercised and not just symbolic? How does dialogue lead to sustained action? And that's why we're here today. And I think Mike is going to be engaging you guys in some issues around like some questions he has that you all can help him with as we figure out how to implement independent living in Indiana more consistently. One last thing I want to mention is what kind of outcomes we hope to get out of meetings like this. I know for me, success looks like a INSILC and a network of SILs that trust each other enough to have hard conversations and work through disagreements. It looks like with people with disabilities across Indiana, knowing there's a system that sees them, advocating for them, and is led by people who share their experience. And I know we're not there yet, but I believe we can get there. And I believe that all of you that are here today are committed to making that happen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the TNTA Center, who's going to share more about independent living philosophy and clarifying some of the roles across the network and how these principles apply in Indiana. So Kimberly or Jeremy, I don't know which one of you is going to go first.
I guess I will go first about the philosophy, and then Jeremy will come in. So hi, everyone. It's Kimberly again. I am going to talk about something that transforms how we think about disability, not as a medical problem, but as a civil rights issue. And so it is called the independent living philosophy. So I hope all of you are familiar with it. But if not, we're always learning, but we're always giving more information about it because it is so critically needed in society today and always. But the philosophy has roots in global disability rights movement and also represents the fundamental shift in power and purpose for people with disabilities. And it's led by people with disabilities. So please know this is one of my favorite topics, and I could probably talk to you about 24 hours about this, but I'm not. I'm going to summarize it. But I also want to have you all think about this as I'm talking. Is really think about what IL truly means to you and how you are making sure that you are making a difference in the state of Indiana. I think IL is extremely critical to ensure the human rights of people with disabilities. But if the world was led by IL, I do think that we would not have the discrimination we see so much in society, and that we are trying to change by influencing IL in our states. So what does independent living really mean? So independent living is not about doing everything alone. And that's where a lot of people misinterpret it. A lot of times, people without disabilities and with disabilities, we need supports to be able to make decisions about our lives. It is all about self-determination, choice, using the disability voice, and control. And it asserts that people with disabilities should have the same civil rights and opportunities as everyone else to decide where we live, how we work, how we access community life, and how we manage the supports we need. So the philosophy really rejects the medical model. So the medical model is the idea that disability is broken and needs to be fixed, or we're dependent on quote unquote professionals. And it embraces the social model, which the social model and human rights model, which says barriers in society is the issue. It's not disability itself at all. And often the biggest obstacles to full participation in life is the barriers that are around us. But what's really important about independent living is we are the only movement that is disability led, which makes us just that much more needed. We are not led by parents. We are not led by doctors. We are not led by educators, but actually we are led by people with disabilities. And those voices are who leads us. I often tell people around me that our consumers they're my boss as well as our board of directors, because what our consumers say is what we put into action, and what they need, we put that into action. The barriers that they present to us, we attack those barriers to help make life better. But it is critical that our movement and the people in leadership in our movement are people with disabilities, because we need to absolutely practice what we preach. But remember, again, this is our movement. This is the movement that was created by people with disabilities and for people with disabilities. And it's also important to note that SILs are not service providers. We are a movement that should be making transformative change and really challenging the stereotypes that we hear about people with disabilities. And all of us are familiar what we hear about people with disabilities about we can't work, we can't be in leadership, and we need to really flip that switch, because anything about people with disabilities, we should always be at that table, because a lot of times when we're not at the table and programs are created about the disability community without us, we know those programs are going to fail. And we've seen it, and we've been part of that for a long time, and that is the power of IL. But just a little history about IL. So independent living grew out of the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s. So at a time when people with disabilities were organizing for equal rights, access, and integration into community life. Activists like Ed Roberts and Judy Heumann, if you're not familiar with them, I really suggest you look them up, because they were very, very powerful. But also others founded the first Center for Independent Living out of Berkeley, California. And it really flipped the traditional service model on their head by insisting that people with disabilities lead their own movement. So SILs, again, are not service providers, but we are leading a movement. And then we also have requirements under the law that we must fulfill, not only as operational, but also the core services. So to turn the philosophy into action, Centers for Independent Living, they provide 5 core services. I really say 6, but the federal government says 5, but I will explain why I say 6. But these are not just programs, they are tools for empowerment. So every Center for Independent Living across the country are required to provide these core services. So the first one is information and referral. So connecting people with the resources and options they need to make informed choices about housing, benefits, assistive technology, healthcare, employment, community supports. We really do people with disabilities are really voicing that they need. So we help connect them to different service providers or programs in the community. We also provide independent living skills training. So this is teaching practical life skills from budgeting, transportation, self-advocacy, interpersonal communication. We even teach disabled parents how to modify their parenting strategy so you can make that list to really meet the needs of your community or the calls that you are receiving from your consumers. But all of these independent living skills training is so that people can live with confidence in the community of their choice. We also do peer mentoring. So peer mentoring is, I think, the bread and butter of independent living. It supports people with lived experience. And so other people working in IL or we're connecting people with disabilities with other people with disabilities to serve as role models, shared insight, and really reinforcing that lived expertise matters in life. A lot of the times when I see peer support, I see people helping people adjust to their disability if they have a new disability, or adjust through the ableism that they are facing in society, the discrimination that they are facing. And that peer support, I think, is truly a game changer, but it also is a life-changing experience. I've heard people that were not very happy and were actually thinking about ending their life until they received peer support and mentoring because they found out that they weren't alone. And that is critical for somebody, especially with somebody with a new disability, to have that expertise but support around them. Individuals and systems advocacy. So individual advocacy is helping individuals assert their rights one-on-one, but it also still should be also working on systems change that removes the barriers and so that we can promote equity and belonging. And so systems change can look all kinds of different ways. You can, policy changes. You can create disability rights laws in your own state. You can change what discrimination, you can end discrimination in your state, but it does take an effort to work together to be able to bring out change. And then there's transition services. And remember when I said 5 core services, but it's really 6. Transition services means 2 things and 2 very different things. One means assisting people with living in institutions or aging out of systems to fully live in their community. And so that could be helping people exit out of any kind of segregated environment, such as nursing homes or ICFs in your state. So whatever is defined by institutions, it's a pretty broad list, but even helping people transition from prisons and back into the community with disabilities is really a service that SILS really should be providing. And it also supports the young people in our lives and helping transition them to adult life, which is such a scary move. And somebody that has been disabled most of all my life, I know that is a very scary jump to take. But the SIL's ability to really impact a youth transitioning into adult life is truly a game changer because they can, instead of starting out with some of the fears that we may have had when we were younger, we can actually help youth with disabilities with not facing the same type of stigma. We can help give them the tools to really be successful at adult life. But these services are not optional add-ons. They are the foundation of how we operate operate IL in all of the states. So that it really, really matters to be able to find those 5 core services, implement those 5 core services, but also truly understand what they're meant for. Again, we are led by people with disabilities. I know that sometimes parents of children with disabilities sometimes takes our seats, and that's something that we do need to stand up against. We're all for parents being allies and supporting the disability rights movement and the independent living movement, but we also have to make sure that this stays our movement and not anybody else's movement, because that is what really makes us stand out again from all the other disability organizations. But why does this matter? Why does IL matter? And I will say independent living is both personal and political, but it gives people control over their lives, their own lives, and pushes society to remove architectural, attitudinal, and institutional barriers that block participation. And I don't know if you all have done a needs assessment, but if you do a needs assessment, you can probably catch on to a few main things I think that are the biggest barriers throughout the country, and that's attitudinal barriers, what other people think about people with disabilities. And IL can truly change that if we're really leading truly by the IL philosophy. But again, it is grounded in consumer control. So people with disabilities are their best experts, no one else. They're their best experts on their own lives and should lead the decisions and policies and services that impact them. And it's also about community integration, justice, dignity of risk, the right to make decisions, take reasonable risks, learn, grow, and live without undue paternalism. And paternalism is really what hurts the disability rights movement as well, because of that feeling and thought that we need to be taken care of. We don't need to be taken care of. We need to be given the tools to allow us to take care of our own selves in our ways. So just closing, and again, I could talk to you about this all day, but I'm not going to because I know we have limited time. But in closing, I do want to say this: the independent living philosophy it isn't just a set of words. It is living, breathing movement. It drives the work of IL centers and silks, but it also can shape policy, and it empowers individuals to live with self-determination, purpose, and choice. So when we talk about independent living, we are talking about freedom. We're talking about justice and community for people with disabilities, full stop. So I am now going to pass this on to Jeremy, but of course I will put my contact information in. If anybody wants to talk more about independent living, I am your girl. So Jeremy?
Thank you, Kimberly. This is Jeremy. I am going to give some of the background information around the network, around the structure and roles, and what brings us all together. So to start, in every state, there's a state plan for independent living, or SPIL, S-P-I-L. This is a required plan that the network has to come together to form. It's really important because it is a strategic direction for everyone working in independent living, and it's based off the feedback and input from the disability community. So this is one of the first ways that we really put into practice what Kimberly just talked about of the philosophy. This is the how do we get there, and what work are we going to do together. So it provides that common direction for the partners within the network. It helps direct some of the funding that comes into the network, and it really helps to determine how your network is going to be structured, where centers may need to be formed, where centers may expand, the goals and priorities with that consumer input, the areas where you know that you're going to be working on outreach to unserved and underserved communities, what partner organizations you're planning to collaborate and coordinate activities with over the 3-year period, and how your network is going to collaborate and work together. With that, everyone has different roles within the state. So the state council, they have the role of really helping to guide and lead that development of the state plan. Through that process, it's that input gathering from the public, how they're getting input from the stakeholders, from individuals with disabilities across the state, working with the Centers for Independent Living on drafting the state plan, setting those priorities, and continuing to get that public feedback throughout that process. The state council also then, once the state plan is approved and everyone is working on the details to implement it, the state council has to monitor and evaluate the implementation of it. So the state council really has to look and see, are we doing what we say we're going to, and how well are we doing it? As they do that, an important thing to keep note of is they are not monitoring the Centers for Independent Living. The state council is set up and it is structured to be a partner to the Centers for Independent Living in your state. They do not have oversight or control over the activities and details of what Centers for Independent Living do. We are truly supposed to be a partner to the centers across the state. In accomplishing all of the work, it does take that teamwork approach. It does take, how do we coordinate and work together? The Centers for Independent Living, with their roles, they, as Kimberly discussed, they provide those independent living services. They are working with the individuals with disabilities across the state, and they're helping to assist achieving those goals with consumers. They are helping to assist in the development of that state plan. So they need to bring that feedback, the understanding of what they're learning from the community, how they are helping to engage the individuals in their community in the development of the state plan, and bringing that information with them as they're helping to develop the goals and priorities within the state plan. As you can imagine, since the state council is not providing any services to consumers, they are not working in that aspect in the communities. If there's things in your state plan that relate to consumer services, it's the centers who are fulfilling that. They are the ones doing that work every single day. So as part of the state plan, there's an evaluation set up, and it discusses how, when, and what your state is agreeing to follow to make sure that you're implementing the state plan, that you're determining that what you're doing is effective, that you're having an impact in your community. So there's an agreement through the state plan that we decide, this is what we want to do. Here's the information we need to gather and collect. And the centers are participating through that process in providing updates and information, providing the data and details to help the state council be able to monitor that implementation. Again, it's not monitoring the activities of the center. They are not in charge of the centers. They don't have any of that oversight, but they have to work together to make sure that they are coordinating and working across the state so that we have the greatest impact possible. Because when every partner is working together on this state plan, we build so much more power together, because there's a lot more as a network we can accomplish with those common goals and direction that we're moving towards. And with that, I believe I'm passing it over to Mike and Casey.
Yep,
Yes.
that's right. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. And so I'd like to start just by thanking everybody for coming out today. And I wanted to give a little bit of an update of kind of what we've been doing and kind of where we've come as a state council in the last 18 months or so. So a little bit about what we've been doing. We've really been working on moving from rebuilding to engagement with the community. We're doing some of that through rebuilding of our current foundation. We've been really focusing the council on meeting all of our compliance goals. We've been doing some board governance training to strengthen our roles. We redid the bylaws, and we've been working on our accountability. We've really made a focus on strengthening relationships across the independent living network. We've been creating financial stability for the organization, and we've been expanding our operations capacity. And we're doing that. And one of the things that we were able to do is to launch a more accessible, user-friendly INSILC website. And then through our work on the state plan, We were able to get a conditional spill approved with a corrective action plan that we are currently working through, and those documents are available on our website. We've redone our organizational policies, and we've written them to address the areas of concern that were in the plan and to engage with and how we continue to develop and to refine the spill. And so we've got that in place along with the target populations. We're doing a spill and community engagement dashboard that's being worked on now, and we hope to have that ready for you soon. And that we want to show the data that we are reporting and show you our progress on those things. We're continuing our ongoing board and staff trainings to increase awareness and understanding kind of across the work that we do. And then on a public engagement level, we've really been trying to work at this at scale and become much better at this over the last few years. We've initiated statewide virtual and in-person town halls. We've expanded the public voice, and attendance and participation has steadily increased, and it continues to grow at those state forums. And that's driven through feedback and surveys that we get from the public. We're continuing to do outreach through media, and we've been able to get media coverage at our last few town halls and increase policymaker engagement with the disability community. So we're really proud of that. And then from a partnership and new opportunity perspective, we're striving to create stronger collaborations with the centers and with other members of our network, including the DSE. Our collaborations, one of the successful collaborations we've had is with the Humana Pathways Project. And this has been really great. We've been able to work with other members of the network to do training for those team members. And we've been able to partner with our friends at the League on a transportation symposium that we did in Evansville, and hopefully some upcoming ones in 2026. And then for us going forward, a couple of things that we're looking at doing is a strategic plan for the organization that should be starting in early spring. And we want to continue to expand our town hall schedule through 2026. And we want to continue to focus on policy impact, engagement, and sustainability. And I should say, I do really want to say that even though those successes on a broad scale might be technically INSILC successes, but they are really a network, they are all network-wide successes. And we wouldn't have been able to achieve all of those things if it weren't for other members of the public and for members of the network for supporting us. And particularly, I would like to thank you guys for doing a few things for us. You guys provided us some great feedback on our website when that was in draft form, and continue to give us feedback on that to make sure that it is as good as it can be. You guys have been really helpful for us in terms of promoting and attending our town halls, and then giving us feedback on those town halls so we continue to improve them. Other members of the network have been great at sharing data beyond just the required PPR so that we can track our progress on the spill goals. So thank you very much for that. And then there are very many members of the IL network who are on our work groups, committees, and the council itself. And we wouldn't be able to do all of this work and have the successes that we have had over the past 18 months or so if it weren't for a collaborative effort from everyone on this call. So thank you so much for doing that, and for our team for helping us on the Humana project. And then as I really kind of think about the successes that we've had, I know we're not where we want to be yet, and we still have a ways to go. And so I do have some questions that I wanted to give a chance for the public to answer. And one of the first things that I wanted to ask was, when we're thinking about these kind of goals and successes and spill progress and all of that, what is the best way for us to report that back to you guys so that you guys can see our progress in a way that makes sense for you and that is effective for you guys to understand? So I would love to hear some suggestions and some feedback on that.
Okay, this is Gloria. This is where we would love to hear from you. Please raise your hand or put something in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to you. I know that we have already had some people have concern about possibly going over our time limit. This meeting is scheduled for 90 minutes, and I do believe that a lot of the things, especially around public comment, is a part of Mike's requesting feedback. So please share your thoughts. You can put them in the chat, raise your hand, and we will recognize you. Anyone?
I do have a couple other questions that I could throw out there to get the ball rolling too. So as you guys know, in our spill, we've targeted really 4 key demographics that we want to outreach to. Of course, we want to outreach to all people with disabilities, but in particular, we talk in our spill about reaching out to youth, to veterans, to rural communities, and to people from racial and ethnic backgrounds that are minorities here in Indiana. And we're starting to think about the process of that and maybe planning some focus groups in 2026. But I would love to hear some suggestions from other members of the community on ways that we can reach out to those groups as well.
Hi, Mike. This is Carrie. It looks like Jim Ward has his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Jim, you're on mute.
You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry about that. My name is Jim Ward. I'm the founder and executive director of ADA Watch and the National Coalition for Disability Rights and Justice. I have a statement that's not in response to your specific questions, but I'll stay within the 3-minute time period. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a person with a disability. I'm here today to speak as best I can on behalf of the spirit and letter of the independent living movement, a movement currently under threat by the increasing politicization of state independent living councils. I want to specifically highlight the work of Teresa Torres and Everybody Counts in Northern Indiana. For over 30 years, Teresa has been a guardian of the true IL model. She has focused her work on the most underserved, specifically to Black and Latino disability communities in Lake and Porter counties, ensuring that the movement is not just for the well-connected, but for everyone. Teresa has put her own health, freedom, and well-being on the line when she stood up against funding formulas that marginalized her community, our community. She was met with exclusion. When she demanded transparency, she was met with litigation. This is the cost of being a servant leader who refuses to compromise on the civil and human rights of people with disabilities. The core issue we face today is that the Indiana INSILC, like others across the country, has strayed from its mandate. Under the Rehabilitation Act, SILCs are meant to be grassroots, consumer-controlled bodies. Instead, we are seeing governor-appointed councils become politicized rubber stamps for state agencies like FSSA. When SILC becomes an extension of state government rather than a voice for the community, it ceases to be a tool for independence. It becomes a tool for control. We have seen valid concerns from SILCs like Everybody Counts ignored or suppressed in favor of political expediency. The fundamental tenet of our movement is nothing about us without us. This is not a suggestion, it is the requirement for the legitimacy of any disability-led organization. We cannot have a system where the state handpicks who counts as a representative of the disability community while silencing the voices of those who have been in the trenches for decades. I'm calling on the ACL to exercise its oversight authority to ensure that the Indiana INSILC returns to a model of genuine consumer control, one that respects the autonomy of individual centers and honors the lifelong sacrifices of advocates like Teresa Torres. In conclusion, I just want to say that we're at a crossroads in Indiana and nationally. We can either have a movement that is led by the people or a system that is managed by the state. Teresa Torres has already made her choice. Many of us have made our choice. It is time for the ACL to ensure the system supports that choice. Nothing about us without us. Thank you for this time to speak.
Thank you. You see Jeremy has his hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Although, before I jump in, is there any response from anybody to what Jim just had to say? Is this meant to be a conversation or is this meant to just be us? And please don't take this from my time. Is this meant to be us just making comments?
So this is Gloria, the facilitator. Um, we want to hear everybody's voice at this meeting, and we do have a time limit. One of the key purposes of this meeting was for the Indiana Silk to address some of the concerns that have been raised, and that does include dialogue. And Mike is asking for feedback, and we really need to get that feedback, and there is still time for question and answer. So this is a time to speak. This is
Okay.
about dialogue. So yes, I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does. It's just you immediately called on me without any response to Jim. So I was curious if there was any response to Jim because there was no time provided for that there.
But this is
So-
Carrie. Let me step in real quick and let Erica McFadden speak for a moment, and then we'll return to you, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think what's helpful, and I appreciate, Jim, your comments. The what would be helpful for us is, we have been working with the Silk for the past year. They're on a corrective action plan. Mike is actually asking all of you for feedback on areas around the corrective action plan that were extended because they are struggling with it. So they wanted your feedback on that. And then when he asked you all, nobody had a response. So we're actually trying to move the state forward, and we're actually trying to get them and the Silk, they're getting there. We had this whole thing about philosophy today to make sure everybody's on the same page as to what the requirements are, because there's several Silk members here. So I just want you to understand, this is a tough conversation. This isn't more of the same. We are trying to collectively move the state forward. But Jim, when you bring a generic statement like that forward without any examples of what you would want us to do as the oversight group, I mean, I don't know, what response can we have? There's no question, there's no specific ideas. What I would ask you all to do is to think constructively, like how can we move forward? How can Indiana move forward collectively as a network? The Silk has shown that they want to change. They're asking you guys for feedback. So this is when you give it, okay? This is your time. If you have other ideas or barriers that have not been considered or things that should be done differently, this is when you can suggest that. It's not like we're opposed to pushback, and pushback is welcome as long as it's respectful, but we're also looking for ideas, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you, Erica. I'm assuming I'm still unmuted. Is that correct?
We can hear
Can
you.
me? Okay, great. And I do, I mean, the reason I asked if there was a response was because Jim did bring up some concerns that obviously are not just here in our state, but at a national level. Especially that concern about being consumer driven. But Mike, to your question, and one, Erica, to your point, there aren't often a lot of people engaged with the Silk, even in the public meetings. And so people like myself who are regularly engaged, there are enough people on here that I intentionally wanted to wait a second and see if other people would like to jump in and make their comments before I put my 2 cents in. But Mike, I do definitely want to applaud the fact that the Silk has had these public meetings, the 3 public town halls that you did within the last year. I think it's important to acknowledge, though, also the fact that those were very poorly publicized, that the same people from Indianapolis and Northwest Indiana made up the majority of who attended most of those meetings, as opposed to the people from the public of the area where they were. And that's the thing that we really need to see. We've done a lot of surveys. You guys have done that for a year. People right here in Indianapolis that I meet every day who have lived here their entire lives with disabilities still have no idea what independent living is. Still have no idea that there is a local center for independent living that serves them, and are still under the impression that that's actually assisted living and not independent living, because we have not made any effort to get the independent living philosophy publicized throughout the entire state not just for people with disabilities to hear it, but for all people, because we all know at any minute, anyone can become part of our people. And I have for the last year and a half, consistently seen an approach as if there are two sides to this. There is one side and one side only, and that is people with disabilities. And right now, and it's very confusing when you talk about the network, because in Indiana, there is Independence Indiana, a network and coalition of 7 CILs that's incorporated, and there are 10 centers for independent living in the state. And when you talk about the network, and when I look at the membership of the State Independent Living Council, there are at least 4 people, voting members, who have direct connections to Independence Indiana. I don't see anybody who's a voting member with a direct connection to any of the other CILs. Even the center director representative is a member of an Independence Indiana CIL. So it's very hard to understand what network you're talking about. I believe the network that the spill calls for is all of the CILs. I do not see that in practice. That is a major concern that you and the council have the ability to address. But to Jim's point, governor appointed council members who are recommended by the council when the council is controlled by other CILs and not consumers themselves. It's a concern.
Great, thank you. Your time is up. Next I saw, did you guys want to respond?
So I would recommend, Carrie, that you guys allow us,
You both have our audio on.
that you allow every comment for us to have somebody, either the SILC or somebody to have a response, so that it's not just the same old, same old. If we can do that, that would be great. But I just wanted to ask Mike, I'm gonna ask you, Mike, or
Sure.
Casey.
Hold
Out of
on.
your
Hold on.
council, and I hate to put you on the spot, how many people are on your council right now?
14 right now.
Okay, out of the 14, how many of them are employed at a SIL?
I would have to go back and look at that number, but when I did the PPR, we are over 50% of people with disabilities that do not work for a SIL. But I don't have that specific number for you right at this minute.
Okay, but you don't, and do you know how many SILs are represented that are on your council?
I would have to go look, which I can do that,
Okay.
but I don't know that number right off the top of my head.
Okay, so I guess what I wanted to find out, and I just wanted you guys to know this, when we did the initial review of the cap, that was one of the things that came up, was that, you know, that like all these SILs were on there that were leading it, that excluded other SILs. And the reality is that when we looked at the numbers, it wasn't. I mean, we looked at the crosswalk of who they were with, it was less than half. And in fact, as you guys know, and federal requirements, they can't, no SILC can have more than half of their SILC be people with disabilities that are working at a SIL. So just so that's clear, you can have more than one SIL member on there, but you can't have more than half. So I wanted to call that out. Also, if there's ever issues with appointments, because sometimes the SILs will put forward recommendations, but really it's the governor's office that makes the decision on who they stick on there, regardless if the SILs say, here's what we want. And often they'll have a hard time getting people appointed. So I give kudos to you guys at the Indiana SILC for actually having almost a full council. That's amazing. So good job on that. A lot of SILCs are struggling. And know that we're always a resource to help with that.
So what you're saying is a minority, when we checked, of the SILC was people employed by SILs.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to stop that rumor now, because I feel like there's a misunderstanding of who's actually on the SILC.
Casey has her hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, this is Casey. I'll answer to the question. We have 14 individuals. We have 4 individuals who work for INSILC at this time of the 14.
Okay, so it's already. Okay.
How
Sorry?
many different sills?
So we have, let's see, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 different sills.
Okay, thank you, Casey.
And to speak to the appointments piece, we had the nomination committee had the applications were all received, and there was, to my knowledge, not any applications received from any of the other 2 sills, that as far as employees or whatnot. The other thing too, we had given to the governor 3 individuals last year, and as far as the year before, no, I'm sorry, correction. We gave them 4 individuals, and we gave them 3 more this past September. Of those 7, only 1 of them was appointed. None of the rest of them have been appointed. So we're at where we have to do, you know, as far as what the governor's office is willing to, what the governor is willing to appoint as well. So even though the individuals have gone through the nomination process, which is with a committee and a rubric of, and looking at where they were located, you know, trying to create representation throughout the state. Even though we submit it, we may not, that person may not be appointed. That's.
And do you have your thing off, Mike?
Yes. Can you hear Erica now?
So thank you, Casey. And I see Jeremy saying you have 12 voting members, 4 of whom are employed by sills, all 4 independent Indiana sills. I want to be clear that this is not the silk's responsibility to be able to like say who's going to be on the silk. The sill representatives are determined by the sill directors in the state, not the silk. This is not the silk's responsibility. So in this situation, Jeremy, you will need to go talk to the other sills and say, we want the people that are with Indiana Independence, Indiana to also be included. But again, like what Casey said, you know, they can put forward the recommendations of what the sills recommend, but the governor's office is going to do what they're going to do. And we can't do anything about that because in the Rehab Act, there's no requirement that says that the governor has to follow what the sills say. So Jeremy, I would take that debate to the other sills in the state. That is not a silk responsibility.
So this is Gloria. I'm looking at the time, and I know that we have we got some hands up and we've got some comments in the chat that we need to address as well. And again, this is all very important. Just a reminder that, you know, today's discussion isn't about one particular person, but we do need to get feedback. That was the whole purpose of today's discussion, is to get feedback on some specific items in order to move forward. And, you know, we want to give enough time for question and answer. So I'm going to very quickly, to be fair, to make sure everybody's voice feels heard. I'm going to look at the chat and address a couple of things, and then we'll get to the people who have had their hands raised. And Carrie, if I miss anybody, please let me know. So looking at Tracy Taylor in the comments put she would like to hear more about, oh, every time somebody posts something, this moves down. So this is what gets tricky. She would like to hear more about the Indiana silk cap. I want to make sure that's what Mike was trying to do, was get feedback about the cap. I don't know if you're aware, but they also have posted it, and it has been on their website since I think May. Is that right, Mike?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
That
that's right.
the entire corrective action plan is on the website. They've been very transparent about sharing that, and they update that each time that ACL signs off on something. Going further, I see, you know, there's some comments that people feel like they get to speak, they don't get a response. We're going to, that today is not the meeting to end all things. There are going to have to be future meetings because we unfortunately are not going to be able to get to everything that we know needs to be addressed. Arthur asked, what kind of things have you already tried as far as reaching out to marginalized communities, which ties into another response later about outreach to veterans. I know they have come up with a very detailed outreach engagement plan. And I'll let Mike or Casey speak to that. Do you want to address that? Because I'm trying to go in order in which all these are coming in.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Gloria. This is Mike. And so a couple of things that we've done, we've had some outreach to a veterans group in South Bend when we were doing the town hall up there. We made a good connection there, and they were involved. They came in as an exhibitor to our town hall. One of our goals for 2026 is to do focus groups for those. Well, I should say in 2026 and in 2027 to do 4 focus groups on those 4 target areas: the youth, veterans, people from ethnic and racial minorities, and people from rural communities. And so that is something that we need to be kind of more thoughtful about. We're kind of thinking through using some different social media besides Facebook as a method to get to attract some folks from the youth community. But we would love some connections that the SILs could provide us to make some outreach into those rural communities and into that racial and ethnic minority group, because we probably will end up contracting with somebody who can help us do the focus groups and is really smart about thinking through those and the logistics of all of that. But when we restarted a couple of years ago, we barely had any kind of a contact list of people around the state, and so we've been rebuilding that as well. And so helping you guys, and we're reaching out to other disability related organizations as well, and we're doing, I think, a decent job at that. But as far as finding some that are specific to those target groups, the youth, veterans, racial and ethnic minorities, and rural communities, that's something that we need to be better at. We haven't done a great job at that, and that is something that CAP is there for, is to help us through the implementation. And because you guys serve those communities out, across Indiana, this is one area I think where we would really like to lean on your guys' support and expertise as we think through that.
Okay, thank you, Mike, for providing that. So, Carrie, if you can help.
Yeah, it looks like first up would be
questions. Okay.
Karen Willison.
Yes, hi, I'm Karen Willison. I'm from Bloomington. And you had asked about issues with the spill or the corrective action plan. And one of the things that I wanted to point out was at the spill plan meeting a couple months ago, they were talking about the guardianship issue. And what came out of that was that essentially there's a committee that's supposed to be working on it, and all they heard from was pro-guardianship people. And there's also the fact that one of the SILs in our state actually runs a guardianship agency, or to the way that they've sort of tried to separate it as well. The director also runs a guardianship agency, but that seems to be a conflict of interest and also seems to really go against the independent living philosophy. So that was one of the, you asked about some of the problems, and the fact that, they basically, there's clear language out there from Nickel regarding guardianship, and yet our state doesn't want to adopt it because they said something to the effect of, oh, it was too harsh, and I don't see why it's such a debate. And that's one example of where, our state is not in line with the philosophy as well as the needs of people in our state. Okay, I'm not an expert on this particular issue, but I do have concerns about the fact that that we as a state are doing something that goes so far against the independent living philosophy. And I would like to see that get addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And this is Gloria, and I realize this has been an issue in Indiana. I do have a question, and because this has come up a number of times, is that what is the ask of the Silk, knowing that the Silk does not have any control over a Center for Independent Living who is offering guardianship services? Just very briefly, can you explain that so that, again, this is a feedback session that they're trying to determine how we move forward. And obviously this is an issue that keeps coming up. Can somebody tell us what is it that you're hoping that the Silk can do, given that they have no control over the Centers for Independent Living?
So this is Karen again, just to follow up. So some things I would say, they could basically put in the spill that it's considered a conflict of interest for anyone who is in a leadership position at a SIL to also run a guardianship agency. That would be a good starting point. Obviously, they can't force it to stop. And also, but they could say that anyone who is in that position cannot be on INSILC. They cannot be an INSILC member. They could certainly choose who is eligible to be a member and not allow those folks to be members anymore. That would be another suggestion I would have. And, you know, they could report to you all at ACL about that. And then ACL, you know, whoever does have oversight, you know, should be notified and can then take action to address the conflict of interest.
Okay. So that everybody gets a chance. Oh, did you want to respond to that, Erica?
Yeah, Peter, do you have me on mute?
They can hear Erica. Yes, they can hear Erica.
So I just wanted to say that, yes, we have been told which one that was, and we can just know that for those that are Part B SILs, we notify the state because inherently they're the oversight organization, and then we follow up. So any Part B only SILs, the state oversees, and then we oversee the state. And then when it comes to Part C SILs, yes, when we hear about things like that, we absolutely go and review them. So I know that we've been made aware, and so we're doing due diligence on that front. And I know Mike and Casey, we had a conversation with them about guardianship, and I think that they, based on our conversation, understand about IO philosophy, but I don't know if one of you guys want to say something about, you know, the IO philosophy and guardianships and where the Silk is moving on that. I think Mike,
Yep.
I think you said yesterday you're gonna say something, or whenever we met, that you were gonna reiterate.
Yeah, and you know, as a Silk, you know, we are reworking that guardianships work group, and so now it is a guardianship make sure I get it right, an alternatives to guardianship work group. And we have asked all of the centers if they would like to have somebody to serve on that work group and to put that, you know, forward. And part of then that what that work group will be doing is looking at alternatives and putting together some material and a position that we can put out there around that. And you know, when that work group got together in its initial form last year, it was a group of folks who were pretty new to guardianship and weren't, you know, as familiar with all of the intricacies and options and alternatives and those things. So they did spend a lot of 2025 educating themselves and hearing from lots of different positions from people from lots of organizations about that so that they can educate themselves. And then they brought back to the spill committee that we should have a new work group formed to develop some alternatives to guardianship that we could promote as a network. And so that's where we're in the process of right now. And those work groups will be officially formed at the next public spill committee meeting, which meets on Monday, February the 16th. So once that spill committee meets and approves the work group members, then that work group and the other work groups will begin their work during 2026.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna try to circle back again, trying to make sure where we're at.
Next up would be
Brianna? Yes, okay.
Yeah. Hello, this is Brianna. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Cool. I will be honest, I don't even really know where to begin anymore. I kind of had an idea of where I was going to say something, and now I'm just very sad, disheartened, depressed, but not surprised. Because I know that we want to move forward, but this really does feel like just the same thing. The one thing I do want to say as a positive is that this Zoom meeting here, the way that it's being run, proves that it's possible to do this for all of the meetings going forward. So I do want to say that that is a step forward that I can appreciate. But gosh, I just have so much to say about I mean, the guardianship issue. Why are we making committees and then disbanding committees and then making committees and then disbanding committees because we don't agree with what national councils say because it sounds too harsh, when in the previous bill, that was what the consensus was. And so that confuses me a little bit. This whole meeting actually has kind of confused me a little bit. It was slated as a share your opinion with ACL, and I'm confused on why we're sharing our opinion with ACL again when we already did that, which is what spurred this meeting on in the first place. I'm confused on why at the beginning of your agenda, it says that we had 45 minutes for public comment. But then further down in the agenda, it said 30 minutes for public comment. And the answer that I got to that, which was also confusing because that got passed off to one of the facilitators, which I'm sure she's lovely, but I didn't pose the question to her. I had posed it to Mike and Erica. But I was told that the INSILC updates roll into the community feedback, which I don't believe that a dialogue in the INSILC updates, which also hasn't gone as was originally planned clearly, should be counted as public comment when, again, we've just been seeing that this meeting is going to be cut short and the public comments aren't going to be answered again. Not everybody is going to get a chance to speak, which is sad. Again, you know, we had talked about before how maybe you could book the interpreter for longer if that's the issue. Maybe we could allow a little bit of overtime. We could do a lot of things that could make sure that the public could be heard, but none of these suggestions have ever been taken into account, gone into effect. I appreciate that the cap is on the website. That's cool. I'm glad that that's transparent, but again, it's confusing because you have a cap, but on it, it says that you felt that you complied with the required activities. So then why is there a cap? It's just a lot of things that don't make sense to me. A lot of things that you're asking for feedback, and we've been giving you feedback this whole time. And every time up to this point, it's been thank you for your comment, and you're not implementing any of these things that we've been suggesting for years at this point. I've been an employee with a center for 3 years at this point, and I've been doing this since I started here. And so for 3 years, it's been exactly the same. So I just don't know. I don't know. I guess that's it. I'm just sad, but not surprised. Thanks, I guess.
So, thank you, Brianna. This is Gloria. I do want to
Erica has.
acknowledge. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Somebody-
The microphone was turned off when Erica was trying to speak.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah,
I didn't see her.
So just so you guys know, I don't know if you're expecting everything to change miraculously in one meeting, because that is not going to happen. What is going to happen is there's going to be there has to be a series of meetings to have these tough conversations Brianna, you're not going to build trust with what's happening with the silk unless these ongoing conversations happen. But the reality is you guys have to move forward too. So what the idea is, and then the silk responds to see if they can do it or not. And it's a network thing. What is the silk going to do? So I think what's important to know is that it's not going to be done in one meeting. And so this is not the only time you're going to be able to make comments. And we're here because we're trying to get some kind of a rhythm set up where there's more dialogue so that we can move forward. Right now, it feels like we're stuck in a rut, like we're still going over the same thing over and over again. The guardianship has been addressed. Casey and Mike, let me just ask you point blank, do you think that guardianships are part of independent living philosophy?
This is Mike. No, I don't.
Okay, Casey. Independent living philosophy, is it part of independent living philosophy?
This is Casey. No, absolutely not.
Okay, so you all heard it. So I wanted to be clear that they know that, and and because of your advocacy, it's helped us to be able to provide training and education. So please have some grace. We're in this together, and let's try to support each other and not divide each other and come together, okay? And recognize where there's movement. Can we please do that? Okay, sorry.
No, thank you, Erica. And I just want to add to that. We are truly trying to hear from everybody, but as you can see, there's no way to have a dialogue and to get to everybody's questions. And in a few cases, we haven't, we want to give people the opportunity to voice their concerns, yet try to not cut them off either, because we know that has been a problem as well. So we really need to remember that we are not going to be able to address all of these problems in one setting. So, Carrie, who's up next? Is it?
Up next is Teresa.
Teresa, okay.
No, actually, there were people whose hands were up before me, please.
Okay, yeah, because I've seen Leslie. This is Gloria, Leslie and Renee.
Yes.
Leslie, I think her hand up was first, and then we'll come to you, Renee. Go ahead, Leslie.
Okay. I've sit and listened to this, and I kind of want to respond to Mike because I think this is important. He asked a question, and I think that this is what I would like to say. This meeting was advertised as a listening session for a long period of time, and I erroneously believed this meant that you were going to be listening to the disability community. Yet again, what happens is there's no dialogue. We get descriptions of the independent living system, which most of us that are working in it or involved with it kind of already know, but also it just there's no interest in the dialogue with people. If you want collaboration, listening to people and no response, no communication, this back and forth, we need to start having a dialogue. And that is the biggest problem that we have. The other problem we have is it just seems that what we're doing in this meeting, as we've done for the last 12 years, I've been involved with independent living, even though I've been in the disability community for 40 plus years. What we see here is another attempt to justify the system. We're not learning what it's not doing for the people, or it's not representing the people, because we still have no voice. We have no voice because a few people get on the council or whatever. Many of them don't know anything, and I was that one of those persons, even though I had a disability for 20 years before I got on it. Didn't know anything about it. We don't really understand what our role is. What is the function of the silk? To write the state plan? In Indiana, that's been done by one or two people for the last 40 years, 35 years. So that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Is it to monitor? We don't talk about, you're not leading. We need to have a voice. The disability community needs a voice, and we do not have one. All the beautiful charts and everything, I would like to ask Mike. I go on the website and suddenly, bam, slam, there's a evaluation of the 2019-2023 spill listed as June 30th, 2024. Is that what you're trying to say, that this was done? This was done in June 30th of 2024? Mike?
Yes, this is Mike, and yes, that's when that report was written. Correct.
That is total, utter fabrication. I served on the planning committee for this particular spill, and I served on the one where we did it. And every time we talked about the evaluation, oh, we don't have those materials because they were usurped by the former executive director. And suddenly it appears a week ago online. This is a fairy tale. And that's what we get in Indiana. We have fairy tales because nothing is being done.
I'm in order to try to get to everybody. Over time. That is exactly why. To feel like they're getting hurt. Isn't going to be the involved. The show doesn't provide. They have to work together.
I do think because right.
Renee, please go ahead.
Um, these actions. Not a systematic change. Before.
Right. So I'm still and all these other things. So catch this in. This say, okay, and now put in the ones that we can. Box.
Okay.
Try to think what was the best is meeting. Because we can't. Themselves.
Note that I understand those meetings could be held. On the council, he represents them. Have me is
but I think it was just mentioning here in Northwest Indiana. Independent living. And people just tend to eat as a benefit. Well, that's contact, but
I don't think, I think it's time that we need to recognize it.
We kind of need to bring them the thoughts. Put this together.
My agency is not.
So future meetings are to put the things that you want to see different. Council is passed new executive director. Council who want this is to go down this road. Today, all things coming up. You
That information on our website where we sign up.
to think steps. Afternoon.